Okay, working on the cooling system on the 51 Studebaker today. I had to get a new radiator because the old one just had a million holes and leaks and previous repairs, it looked like. This radiator was off of eBay for $160 with shipping, and it is really the only option that I could see, or at least the option that would require the least modification. The listing showed that this would fit this car specifically, and I'm here to tell you it absolutely did not the way that it came, but it will work. But you have to do some modifying to it. The first thing is you'll have to get a hose that has a 90-degree bend in it. Or at least to me that would be the best way, because the original radiator has that little 90-degree coming out as a metal neck on the radiator, where the new one doesn't. It just comes straight out. So I was able to find this pretty easily. It is a Gates 25804, I think is what that says. It is an 1.5 inch by 19 3/4 flex hose, so that will work fine. The clearance with the fan is going to be fine. There's no issue with that. The even with this, it's back a little bit, but even with it up where it should. So to modify the radiator, you have to cut these side panels way back. And also the other thing is they're mounted to the wrong side. The original radiator had the little flanges on this side with the water outlet side. On this one it's on the opposite side. So I had to cut off, there was a little skinny cross brace on the frame, or the body I guess, that went basically from here to here, and I had to cut that off. So I may come up with some way of putting one back on. I imagine it's just in case there is any flex in the body, you're not putting all that stress on the radiator itself. So for just sitting here in the yard, I think it'll be fine. But before I take this out on the road, I may want to come up with another way of just putting, I mean, it's very skinny. I can show you. It's just this little piece of metal. I was able to just kind of break the weld off on this side, but this side I kind of just ended up having to cut it. But it basically just went right about there, which obviously with the new radiator we can't have it there. So either I'll just try to put it back. I think it'll still clear the fan there, so I'm not sure about that. I'll have to come up with something for that. So you have to cut, and I'm gonna have to actually cut a little more of this off. I think I'm gonna take it flush right to this little bend right here, just cut that off down to here, because the horn panel, or whatever you want to call this, these sides, they kind of come right up around the radiator. So I'll have to figure that out. It's one step at a time, but I'll cut this off. I basically, the holes on the top, this is where the original radiator mounted. They go all the way through just on the top, not on the lower ones. So I'll have to drill. I already started here, but I stopped just to make sure that everything, like the fan and hoses and everything, will clear. I made sure the hood closes. There's no obstruction with the cap or anything like that. So I'll go ahead and drill straight through. It's gonna be hard to get to the bottom one though. I may just have to do these middle ones and the top ones, and hope that's good enough. But just drill straight through. We'll at least have 4 mounting holes. Maybe I'll get some kind of a rubber insulator to put between there, just to kind of, I don't know, save a little bit of shock to the core, the radiator core. The only issue I'm seeing now is the original hose size, which is an inch and a quarter, coming out of the thermostat housing, which is somewhere around here. The top is bigger on this. They're both 1.5 inches instead of 1.25 inches and then 1.5 inches. So I'm gonna have to get a hose that adapts 1.5 inches to 1.25 inches, it looks like, because that's Not gonna work. No big deal there. That's the only issue I have to get a radiator in this thing with new hoses. As far as the rest of the cooling system, I basically just disconnected all of the heater hoses. I just had a loop going from here to here for now because I'm not worried about heat anytime soon. So we can just bypass that. And I was flushing out the block with the garden hose. I had taken the water pump off, which is just temporarily mounted up right now. And I was just flushing water through from the top and just trying to, I got a lot of rust water out of the thing. I basically just kept doing it till it came pretty clear, and I would kind of go back in from the bottom and try to fill it up and then let it all flush out, and just you know, kept getting more and more junk out of the block, which will help. And then I put in some radiator cleaner. I poured it in and I put the water pump back on just to try to hold it as much of it in there. You know, I put that in, filled it with water, and that's actually been in there for a while, so I need to drain that out just to try to break up anything else, just so I don't have all this rust going into the new radiator. Just try to prevent that as much as we can. That's basically where I'm at with it. I have ordered a whole brake line repair kit. It basically has a flaring tool, comes with like 25 feet of brake line. I bought a tubing bender, so I'm gonna, you know, once I get the cooling system squared away, I'm gonna get into getting some brakes. I might at least try to get the just maybe the front brakes first and just kind of block off the rear. We'll see how hard it is. I may just go through and do everything so we can actually get the thing running and stopping. Hopefully it will move. I also have gotten into the transmission, the automatic transmission. The dipstick is right inside here. There's this little cover that unscrews. It's that, and attach the dipstick. So interesting little tidbit is that, did I just get some dirt on that? Let's see. You do not want dirt in your automatic transmission. I probably should clean that there, but we'll just carefully set that back in. These, man, somebody's already building a nice web there. These transmissions, when they were built, there was no such thing as automatic transmission fluid. They used a 10-weight oil, you know, like just SAE 10 was what these things had. And when I checked this the other day, there was either nothing on the dipstick or a very little bit on the very bottom of the dipstick, and it was just like tan. But what I've done, what I've researched, is that you can use the type F fluid. So I went ahead and got a few quarts of that, and I got a Lucas, you know, one of the things you put in every old piece of junk transmission. So I dumped that in first, and I poured a quart in of type F, and at least now without it running, there's fluid on the dipstick. I have a couple more back here. What else do I have? This is the rear end oil. I'm going to drain and fill that. And there's just some coolant, which I'll probably not worry about that until I make sure there's no leaks. I've got some brake hoses there. I have not ordered master cylinders or brake cylinders as of yet, but that'll be the next thing that I do. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at on this thing. Until next time, that's where we're at. Alright guys, so I've been doing a lot of stuff with the Studebaker kind of off camera. I've got a new cooling system. Well, I've got a new radiator in, new upper and lower hoses. The water pump is bad. The water pump does leak. I can get a new one for about $120. The charging system is still not working. I haven't completely written it off yet because it might need a few things. It might just need the voltage regulator to be, I think they call it polarizing it, where you just kind of like touch two of the terminals together. I forget which exactly. It was the field and the battery terminals, and it kind of shocks it into polarization. I'm not entirely sure about that yet. I have taken the generator off and apart, cleaned it up the best I could. I did get it to motor, so I'm pretty sure that that itself is okay. I've cleaned the contacts in the voltage regulator, but I don't know for sure if the coils themselves are good or not. The carburetor is just having lots of issues. So basically, yesterday I came out, I put everything back together, and I took the distributor back out, and because I was having an issue where it was usually if I came and tried to start it, it wouldn't start until I took the distributor cap off, kind of flicked the points a little bit, and so I saw it sparking, and then it would have spark and it would usually start. And it was like doing that every single time. So I took it back apart, and I kind of realized that the points, like the arm that moves off of the cam, it didn't really seem like it had enough spring tension to want to stay connected or contacted. So I took it apart and I kind of bent the little spring in there a little bit to try to give it a little bit more tension, and I readjusted the gap off of the car to 20 thousandths, and I put it back in, and it fired right up. Like that made a big difference. Like it definitely was an issue. So I think I've got the ignition system is pretty good, and I also was playing with the timing a little bit. There's no mark left on the crank pulley or the harmonic balancer that I can see at all. Usually there's like a little cut in it. This doesn't have that. So to put it back in at top dead center, I had to just kind of take the number one spark plug out, put my finger over the hole, turn the fan until I felt the air coming through, and then when it stopped, I knew I was in the compression stroke. So I put the distributor back in, lined the rotor up with cylinder number one on the distributor cap to get it close, and I left the two adjustment screws, like the hold down screws, loose, and played with the timing, and where it was pretty close to where it should be. Like just by you kind of listening for the engine to speed up a little bit, and it definitely was the smoothest and the fastest, I guess, or at least the smoothest right where it was. So that did seem to be the issue. I think the issue with that was just the points were not adjusted properly. So it'll run. The thermostat opens. It gets you get temperature and everything. It was running really smooth for a couple minutes, and then it'll just shut off. And it shuts off so quickly that it kind of seems like it's a spark issue. But it's not, because as soon as I went to recrank it, it won't fire back up. Spray a little gas in there, it fires back up. So it's a fuel issue. You can't just buy, there are very few parts for this car you can just buy, like Rock Auto or anything like that, as you'd expect. It's a 72-year-old car. I can get a rebuilt Carter WV carburetor for like $400 on eBay. So, I'd assume that it would work. So I can do that. There's 400. It needs a water pump. That's 120. It may need a generator / voltage regulator. Another $100, $200, who knows. The voltage regulators, I think, are pretty cheap. You can buy kind of universal ones for cheaper. It keeps adding up, and I'm really starting to think, do I keep throwing money at this 85 horsepower flathead inline six that gonna sound like that airplane that just flew by conveniently. That's really what this thing sounds like. It sounds like a Cessna, which I guess is fitting. I mean, it does have all this airplane styling. But you know, if you go on Marketplace, you can buy like a 1990 C1500 pickup that's got a, you know, clapped out body and frame that still runs decently for like $1,500. So I'm really starting to think, you know, I feel like that's the way to go. I mean, this engine, I could sell this engine. I mean, I don't know, maybe $100, $200, something like that. Maybe the engine and transmission together, and just put in a small block Chevy. Small block Chevy. I think I would just keep it as an automatic. I feel like this car, the looks of this car is what's the cool factor. You know, just the styling and the fact that it's something you just don't see. I don't feel like it needs to have all the unreliability of a 51 drivetrain. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I feel like putting in like a 200 horsepower, you know, 185, whatever they had in the late 80s, early 90s, or maybe even doing like the Vortec, the later 5.7s, you know, 350s. That's a Vortec, had like maybe 250 horsepower. And fuel injection. I mean, I guess it's okay if it's carbureted. Just the electronic ignition and just the accessibility of the parts for a small block Chevy. You know, a carburetor, like any kind of carburetor would fit on it. It's, you know, much easier to find replacement parts for the drivetrain or the engine than this. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I may even try to, well, that's not good. Yeah, so I think where I'm at right now is I know that I still need to use a fuel tank from this car. I can't use a fuel tank from a Chevy truck. I wouldn't think. I don't know. But the tank doesn't look too bad. So I think I'm going to try to get the tank out of here today and just assess that. I also think that the fuel, let me show you, I have this thing running off of a really thin brake line right now, which is probably a big chunk of why this is starved for fuel at some point. The hose that was going into this was leaking, so I just took a small piece of brake line. This was actually my first, I'm not even showing you, this is my first brake flare right here that I've ever done. Well, that's not true. I have done them before, but it's been a long time. And I feel like, you know, this is a really skinny line, so it may just not be getting enough supply to where it's running out of gas, basically. So I feel like the logical next step is to get the tank in the car situated, run a new proper size fuel hose slash metal line, whatever I end up doing, from the tank into here, into the fuel pump, and seeing if that helps this carburetor work better. Because the other thing is, it still is falling on its face, even if it's been running for a couple minutes. It's still, I did get the accelerator pump to work, or at least it does spray some, but still when I try to rev it up, it just wants to fall on its face. So there's just issues with the carburetor. You can tell the engine is fairly solid. It's smoking a little bit, but you know, I mean, that's to be expected until it really gets some kind of actual runtime. So that was my thoughts, is possibly trying to find like a, you know, cheap $1,500 Chevy truck, or even just, you know, like an old, there's like old you know, Chevy or Oldsmobile station wagons on there too that would probably be just as good, and probably be, you know, something I could get even cheaper, because I mean, who really wants those things? The OBS body style trucks right now are actually getting kind of valuable. So I don't know. That's kind of where we're at. Leave a comment, you know, whatever you think. But I came out this morning and started soaking down the hardware on this. It's just a couple bolts. It's basically just a couple bolts on this side, and there's like some weird one on that side. There is a drain there. I haven't even attempted to take that out because I feel like if I take it out, it's just gonna make it leak. I hit that also right there. This must be for the gauge sending unit. Yeah, I'm just gonna see if I can drop this out and just assess the situation of this tank. So they didn't want this tank to ever come out because all of these are bolts that go through. They're not studs. So you have to be able to hold the top of it. All of them. The only one that's easy is this one right here. You can get a wrench on that. These over here, I guess I could get on this one. But even that wouldn't be the easiest. These, you know, like there's just no room. This one actually came all the way down, like it must be rusted in place. This one's spinning, one over there is spinning. So realistically, I guess it's two of them that I need to get something on the top of. So I started thinking, well, maybe the trunk floor is rusted enough that and it is. I mean, it needs to be completely replaced. I could just cut out the trunk floor and just get it from the top. But I think that just cutting, I mean, even that's not going to be easy because there's this lip, so I can't really even get anything up in here to cut that off. And this, I mean, I haven't tried a line wrench on that yet, but I may just end up cutting that line off and then just getting a socket over it. You know, once it's out, I can put a socket over the fitting and just replace all that line. Or just, I might just run a hose all the way to the front for right now. So yeah, not easy, and you know, nothing ever is really, but I was kind of hoping for a little bit more thought that went into building this car. I mean, what, you know, especially back in the day, I'm sure gas tanks came out periodically. I don't know. I mean, you know, we have to replace the sending unit. Oh, there's actually a little place above that. I guess that's why. So maybe I leave it in and just try to clean it out, or maybe see if I can access that and see if I can look in there and see how bad it is. I don't know. Maybe that's where I'm at. All right, I'm gonna revisit the dropping out of the fuel tank, and I just cleared everything out of the trunk and just kind of sucked up as much of the loose metal and like that undercoating just kind of flaking off everywhere. Just got most of that out. There's really nothing left of this floor. It's just absolutely wafer thin everywhere. So I'm gonna just try to just cut that out, at least cut it up enough to where I can get down to the bolts on the fuel tank. Alright, so I just learned something. Once I got the spare tire out, I saw there was this little piece of metal like reinforced metal right here with these 2 bolts in it. I just took them out, and now the gas tank is free on this side. So that makes that side easier. I don't have to necessarily cut this out right now. I cut this part up so I have access to that bolt right there, and I think the other one on the front I could get to from under the car. So we should be able to get it lowered out. That filler neck boot off, you can really smell the varnish smell of the old gas. Definitely is not good. Oh gosh. Wow. Well, that's definitely the worst gas I've ever seen. I guess some of it must have evaporated over the years. But at least it doesn't have any leaks, I guess. It held gas all that time. It's mostly rust, I guess. Alright, so I guess now I'm just gonna rinse it out with water a few times, and then once I get most of the big stuff out, I'm gonna fill it with well, not fill it, I'm gonna put that gallon of like Evapor Rust or whatever it is that I got. I'm gonna see if I can get the sending unit off first though. This will give me like another access point to maybe get like a pressure washer inside. Try to blast as much stuff out as I can. Oh yeah. That's been in there a while, but it still goes up and down. What are the odds of that actually still having any kind of... No, there's no way. It's all rusted out too. Yeah, there's no way that's any good. And we're gonna try. I mean, it's only 1 wire. So I guess it grounds to the tank, which is bolted directly to the car. It doesn't have tank straps like a newer car. And then that would be your positive ground car. So I guess this would be negative and then this would be positive. So yeah, it looks real nice in there. Yeah. Looks pretty bad, but hopefully I can clean it up. I'm actually not sure if I can get any kind of a pressure washer in there to speak of. Maybe this side. That one might be a little bit too small for the tip that I have. Maybe we can just kind of slosh stuff around a little bit. So right there is the pickup, and that looks like that actually runs kind of deep into there. Not sure if I'm gonna get that off or not. Hopefully I can. I figured I'll just cut it off a little bit further out. Worst case scenario, if I can't get it off, I can just flare the end and we can just put a hose on it. But hopefully I can just put like a deep socket on there and get this off. I think I should be able to. Yeah, but that is pretty much what I expected. Really gross. So just look at what's left from that little bit. I mean, it probably, you know, it probably had some gas in it when they parked it, and I doubt it was that low. I guess most of that is just evaporated or something. I was probably going to do that about 1,000,000 times until it seems like it's somewhat clean, and then I'll put the evaporust in there. Alright, so the tank's been kind of marinating with this stuff here, this evaporust, CRC. Just kind of come over and slosh it around every once in a while, but just like ease as much of that as I can. I did get this out, did exactly what I thought, you know, just put like a deep socket over it. I forget what size it was, but it came out. I'll make sure that the pipe that's going through there is clear, but helping it, soaking with that stuff should help also. So I want to try and recreate this fuel line. This went in the back. This is kind of what I think, it kind of came down like that into the tank, but it is this right here goes down, and it actually comes to the outside, so loops over and runs up, and then basically like here it was just rusted off. And I guess there's the next section of it right there. Okay, you know what, I can see there's a union right there, so I might try to separate that. Well, I can at least have two parts. That seems a little more reasonable. Oh man, the frame is actually rotted through in a couple places. Warning, I am shirtless and you might see a little bit of plumber's crack. Broken to another piece. Something like that. Don't ever cut actual like live fuel lines this way. That's really not a good idea. But I don't think fuel is run through this tube in at least as long as the car is sat for. Remember, it's righty loosey on this car, on the left side of the car. Let's see, yeah, so it's this. Let's just pull this off because I'm gonna have to get in there and do the brake lines very soon as well. But if I can't actually get that separated, I'll just cut it, and I'll just know that's about the area that I can separate the two, so I don't have to worry about running one line, because that would be impossible. So, 1/2 and 9/16. What I would really need is a line wrench. Oh, well, that did turn. It'd be really cool if I could clean up the fitting and reuse it, or the barrel connector, or whatever you want to call it. I did actually cut some of this off on the other end too, so I can't just connect a new line right here. I have to run do the whole thing. The one thing I just realized, it seems like it's a lot harder to bend the, I guess it's steel line for this than it was the copper brake hoses, the brake lines. This old stuff I think was actually the same thing. It's like a steel, I guess, and it's a lot harder to, like, you can see that's really stiff. The copper stuff, you can get in there and bend it real easily. It's a little tiny piece, and it's still stuck. Okay, I'm pretty sure, well, it's probably not going to be exact, but hopefully I can make something a little bit close. Not really sure what's the best way to flatten this. I guess that works. Definitely gonna try to make it a little bit longer. Rather it'd be a little too long than a little too short. Of course, I guess I could always try to extend the one that goes up in the front a little bit if it came to that. Puts a little bit more of a sharper bend in it than the original was, but I don't think it'll be